Hello everyone and welcome back to another glorious video. So today we are carrying on with the Siege of Terra series. I've already done the summary for the first book. This is the summary of the second book, The Lost and the Damned. Please, 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 in the Emperor's name, be aware that this video is full of absolute spoilers. If you have not read the first or the second book, turn your head from this video right now and run for the hills, because I will spoil it for you, and that is something you probably don't want to happen. Now, I took the book to Florida with me. I've just come back off vacation from Florida. For those of you who don't know, I actually read a bit on the plane, a bit at the pool, a bit coming back and stuff like that. It was an amazing book, absolutely fantastic, amazing book. The product itself is fantastic. It has like all these little art pictures in. This one had a map of the full Imperial Palace, which was great because it gives you a visualization of what is where and stuff like that. Now, the actual summary I'm going to be doing is another chap's summary, because he did it better than me, because of course, as I was flying, well, I wasn't flying the plane, but as I was on the plane flying, I couldn't write anything down, or at the pool write anything down. But this chap over on Reddit called Zararudio88 did a fantastic summary, so I'm just going to be taking from his and, you know, just telling you here. I sent him a PM saying, hey dude, do you mind if I just use your summary? And he was like, yeah, sure, do it. So thanks, Zararudio. If you want to go and check out the full post yourself, I'll put the link in the description. Go over and give him a like or a thumb up, whatever you bloody do on Reddit. It's from the R40k lore form, which is an amazing lore form anyway. You should be over there because they post amazing things. All right, let's jump in. So it says the book starts off with the Traitor fleet bombarding Terra from orbit. For those of you who don't know, the Traitor fleet has now full control of the space around Terra, and that's what the first book covered, the Solar War. It was fantastic between, you know, the Imperial Fist, the White Scars, and the Blood Angels fleets taking on, you know, that of Horus's fleets. And Horus came out of nowhere because it was basically, it wasn't really a trap, but it was all a plan and stuff like that. So the first shot is fired directly at the Sanctum Imperialis. That is basically where the Emperor is chilling, but does no damage as the shell is intercepted by dozens of point defense lasers before it even reaches the Void Shields, of course, because Rogel Dawn is basically just fortified this planet, because that is what he does best. The Loyalist guns on the ground respond, and a massive exchange of fire takes place. However, Horus's bombardment is largely insufficient on the palace itself due to something called the Aegis. Now, the Aegis is a Dark Age Imperial Void Shield. It's basically like well, of course, it's from the Dark Age technology. It's one of these massive pieces of tech that we'll never have again, and we really don't know how it works and stuff like that. So that is basically protecting the Imperial Palace. The Aegis is a multi-layered self-repairing. It's basically invincible. That's how awesome this thing is, so that's how important it is as well. Horus could simply exterminate the planet, but he doesn't want to, due to the importance of Terra to the ruling of the Imperium. Terra is like the beacon of the Imperium. You know, if you're sitting on the so-called throne of Terra, you're basically the king of the Imperium. That shows your authority and stuff like that. Dawn has placed one of the last orbital plates in the atmosphere over the palace. This is like providing basically a sacrifice, so that takes like the full brunt of the fire, and the defense platforms on there also add, you know, a bit of defense as well for stuff coming down. But he's put that there it's like a second layered shield, let's say, so that takes the fire rather than the people underneath it and stuff like that. Now, one of the main characters is a Imperial Guard called Cashirio, and he is an enumerator for Enumerator. Now, one of the main characters we follow is a chap called Cashirio, and he is a enumerator for the Imperial Guard. I should say Imperial Army at this time, because the Imperial Guard really isn't around. One of the main focuses of this book actually focuses in on the Imperial Army and how they're reacting and what's going on with them, because we always look at this story as it's basically Rogel Dawn and the Space Marines and, you know, fighting over Space Marines, but there's not. There's billions and billions of Imperial Guard fighting each other, and Traitor Guard, and, you know, all the mutants and stuff like that. They're like the bulk of it. These are the guys that are in the trenches, hand to hand, killing each other. So Dawn has basically been conscripting, just like anyone he can. Anyone who can hold the gun, fire, and could kill the enemy you are basically now in the Imperial army, and you just crammed into places. Like, for example, like they're sending them around like all crammed into trains around the Imperial Palace. It really hints at me like what the Russians did in World War II. No one just sending just train loads and train loads and train loads of people to the front. They didn't have like any type of training at all. They were just bodies at the end of the day, just to be there, just to, hey, look at all the people we've got. Just keep sending you guys, because we'll just keep sending bodies to you. You know, it kind of hinted at that really scenario. There's a passage where it says like there's an acting officer for every 300 soldiers, so you really get like the sense of like who is basically trained and who is not. So Cashirio is posted to the first of a 3-trench line defense system around the outermost palace wall, because Dawn is basically putting the Imperial Guard as the first contact, let's say, with the enemy. These trench systems were basically set up to avoid the Chaos Forces from being able to reach and dig under the Imperial walls themselves. We actually meet several of Kashirio's squad mates, one of which, by the way, is an Alpha Legionnaire operative from an earlier book, Mazadra. Am I pronouncing that right? I'm sorry if I've just butchered it. And another grizzled veteran called Doromek, who basically tried to intentionally avoid the early drafts because he probably knew what was coming and he wanted to get the hell out of Dodge. So we have a scene where Drogo Dawn holds a meeting with the High Lords of Terra in a great chamber in the Sanctorium Imperialis as the bombardment rains down against the Aegis. They all discuss the situation with Dawn, the Khan, Sanguinius, Valdor, Malcador. Dawn emphasizes that the main strategy is to buy time for Guilliman. This is the thing I've been trying to explain to people. Everyone knew that the palace was basically going to fall. It was just a matter of time. But what Dawn is doing is making that time last as long as possible, so Guilliman, the Dark Angels, the Space Wolves, all they can arrive and they can come in the rear guard and really start hurting the traitors, and their attention then probably moves to them, and then they have a chance at fighting and destroying the forces of Horus and stopping this heresy. At this meeting, we actually get a scene from Malcador where he basically starts talking. You know, the Emperor Malcador keep their little secrets. Malcador, for once in his life, actually opens up about nearly everything. He tells the Primarchs about the Webway project, the need to hide it from Chaos, that it was a mistake not to tell the Primarchs the truth, the Webway being an Xenos origin, you know, all that kind of stuff. He updates the Primarch situation, telling the Khan Sanguinius Dawn that Vulcan lives, and inside, well, he's basically, for those of you who don't know, he's inside the Imperial Palace. He's like the fail-safe if Horus wins and they all come through, and he just like nukes everything. Now, they were all surprised at this, and this was kind of weird for me because Dawn knew Vulcan lives, because in the book where Vulcan arrives on Terra, him and Vulcan have a little embrace, they have a little hug, and, you know, and Dawn has, I won't say gets a bit emotional, but it was very, very, very cool to see him hug Vulcan. And in this scene, Rogue Dawn's like, what? He lives? And I'm like, you know he lived. You just hugged him like 2 hours ago. What are you on about, dude? So I don't know if that is like a continuity error, or, you know, maybe there's something else going on. I'm not too sure, but yeah, that bit struck me as kind of strange. Now, if we go back to the traitors, this book is really, really fun for the traitors, because you get a really good insight into what the hell is going on. So we have a scene on board the Vengeful Spirit, and Abaddon is basically disgusted with Horus. He's literally swelling with power. His face and form are bubbling as the Chaos Gods are channeling their energies into his body. I just nearly knocked my bloody lamp off the desk. He spends most of the time sitting in a comatose state on the throne, clutching the skull of Ferrus Manus. Poor Ferrus. Lupercal's core isn't just physically corrupted, it now exists in a warp pocket dimension inside the ship itself. There's so definitely heresy going on in this ship. When Abaddon steps into the chamber, it's like stepping into a foot of a demon world. Horus is guarded by only 2 Justarian and Falcus Kibri, but hundreds of word-bearers under Zardu Layak are in the room. Of course, word-bearers are always there when things are not right. This is something that disgusts Abaddon greatly, and he constantly resists the urge to kill Layak. Abaddon says Horus's old charisma is appearing less and less, and he is more of a sort of terrifying abomination, and then anything else now that commands through fear instead of personality. Because remember, like in the first books, like you basically follow Horus up the arse of the devil, because he was just so awesome. He was just an inspiring leader. But now it's just chaos taking over bit by bit, and it's just rah Horus instead of follow me, brother Horus. So it's kind of sad in a way, but it's kind of what you expected, because this is what chaos does. It just corrupts you. It just makes you into a different person. We have this really cool scene where Horus is inside the warp, and it's basically like a flashback to the first time seeing the Emperor when he was young and brought from Cathonia to Terra, for like the celebration and stuff like that. As the dropship descends, and he's accompanied by 4 old comrades that over the course of the conversation are basically revealed to be chaos gods. So we have this like really, really cool scene where, it's like a flashback. It's in the warp and stuff like that with Horus, where it's the first time Horus seeing the Emperor when he was young and brought from Cathonia to Terra. And as the dropship lands and descends, he's accompanied by like 4 old comrades, and you're like, okay, it's basically people who have been come from Cathonia, maybe like his honor guard and something like that. But it's revealed over the passage that these 4 comrades are actually like the 4 chaos gods, walking with Horus. Horus is not entirely lucid and can't really remember who these companions were, so it's like the chaos interfering in the sequence, let's say. We get another really cool scene where Sanguinius is flying over the palace on his own against the wishes of Rogue Dor. Like, God damn it, Hawk Boy, you gotta get shot down. During this time over the palace, he suddenly gets a vision seeing how the palace will look in M41 before it snaps back to the present. He meets with Ralderon and Maximus Fane of the Imperial Fist. Now, this is another thing which confuses me. So, for those of you who know the name Maximus Fane, then you'll know that Maximus Fane is also in the Beast Arises series, which takes place 1,500 years after the Siege of Terra. So this guy is probably at that time the longest living space marine, but there's no mention of Maximus Fane as this like grizzled veteran or anything like that. It's basically explained and described in the Beast Arise series that he's kind of a veteran, but he's not like this aged old god of a veteran, like Dante and stuff like that. That's never explained. So again, I don't know if that is another continuity, or they've just not cared about it at all. That bit really confused me as well. As an Imperial Fist fanboy, it definitely confused me. So they're basically at this thing called Bastion 16, which is like one of the little fortresses, which the Loyalists believe will be the first site the traitors will touch down at. So this is why they're all at this meeting at this site. This is also where poor Cashirio is stationed outside of as well. So remember the Imperial Guard person. This is where Cat. Do you know what? I'm just gonna call him Cat. This is where Cat is stationed outside of in the 3-tiered trench system. Much like Dawn had a meeting with the Loyalist Primax, Malkadon and stuff. That we have a meeting of the Traitor Primax, and I've got to say, this was a bit hilarious. I was giggling to myself when I was reading this. So there's a meeting of the Traitor Primax in space that shows basically what they've all become. They're all like monsters now and stuff like that. Kelbor Hal is also there, but is largely shown to be prideful and useless. Perturabo is bitter that Horus is having him simply fortify the Sol system in preparation for Guilliman's arrival instead of commanding the siege, of course. Angron is a monster that simply wants to immediately attack. Frogrum gets kicks, deliberately trolling Angron and watching the reaction. Magnus keeps to himself and refuses to really cooperate with anything. All the traitors are projected via holograms inside the vengeful spirit. Abaddon, Tormageddon, and Axamund are there too, but Horus is late, and Abaddon expresses his frustration that he must always be with Lyke again. You see, the seeds are growing. Abaddon tries to get the Primarchs under control, but they laugh him off, and Perturabo states that Horus values his brothers more than any of his servants. So you can see that, again, the little bit of shadowing of Abaddon, because eventually Abaddon gets all the Primarchs under his command, or he gets certain things from them. Abaddon eventually cuts off Angron's audio feed because Angron is just yelling into the mic, "Rah, let me go, let me purge everyone," and stuff like that. So basically, he cuts off his audio feed, and you just see like this, like big hologram just shouting stuff, but there's no sound coming out of it, and this is hilarious to Fulgrim because he just sees like this big red guy losing his mind and there's just nothing coming out of his voice. So they're basically discussing like the plans at this. You know, Horus eventually arrives and is able to control the situation. He states that Abaddon has all his authority when he's not around. Lyak explains that the demon primarchs are literally being forced into obeying Horus now by their patron gods. Perturabo gives a briefing of the situation, stating that despite his duty of fortifying the solar system, he's also been analysing the Aegis and found a weak point with bombardment patterns. So again, the Aegis is this thing that's protecting everything. It's centered around Bastion 16, where the allies think where they're going to attack, and it's basically Bastion 16 is the main place in this book, which had a reactor accident recently. So that's why like the Aegis is like partially damaged and it's self-repairing itself, but it's not at full strength. The Aegis' self-repairability, like I just said, is weaker and will take some time to repair. If the traitors concentrate orbital fire on that spot, they can weaken the barrier to a point where slow-moving aircraft can safely enter it and make attack runs at the void shield generators. Of course, Angron doesn't like this plan and simply wants to attack the palace immediately because that is Angron, raw, raw, raw. Magnus explains that the Emperor's psychic might is not only preventing any demonic manifestation on Terra, it would also disintegrate the demon Primarch if they try to set foot on its soil. So the Emperor's psychic might is another like little force field keeping chaos off for now. The Emperor is of course getting weaker, and Magnus believes that by decimating enough of the population centers elsewhere on the planet, they can use the bloodshed to power a ritual to disable the Aegis and the Emperor's psychic shield. So maybe this is why we all start killing civilians. This is heresy, brothers. So we start to see scenes where we see the first traitor landings on Terra, which are conducted by the Lost and the Damned. This is the title of the book. Specifically, traitor army who have been sitting in their ships for months doing nothing, and a herd of beastmen which are driven into a frenzy of a recorded speech by Lyak where he points out the injustices of the Imperium has heaped upon his kind. Despite being for void use only, the traitors forcibly land these massive troop transports around the palace, specifically Bastion 16, as we've already stated. Hordes of beastmen, mutants, traitor army and cultists attacked the panicked conscripts, but they repel the attack. This pattern repeats itself many times over the coming weeks. During one such battle, one of Kashirio's comrades, who accuses Doric of being suspicious, is found shot through the back by a Lasburn. And we said, you know, there is Alpha Legion around, so it's kind of like, who can you trust at this point? As we actually see the traitors land on Terra, we actually get a perspective change. It changes to a pilot, an Imperial army fire wing at the palace. The traitors are basically make constant bombing attempts on the void shield generators as what their battle plan is. The anti-gun batteries, etc. It's a bit of like a Battle of Britain scenario, like, you know, fire, 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 like Spitfires and stuff, but 40k wise. There are no enemy to start his aircraft, and the Imperial dominate the fighting. The one-by-one anti-ship batteries and the void arrays are being disabled by the weight of numbers. This is what I mean. There's just so much forces that Horus has at his disposal. You can't keep it back. Terra will fall, but it's just down to Guilliman making sure it falls in a slow manner rather than a fast manner, so Guilliman can hurry up and, you know, bring all the reinforcements and stuff and, you know, relieve Terra. So this is why it's like every battle, every fight absolutely matters. You have to delay the enemy as much as possible. There's a scene where Kashirio and a few others in his squad venture inside of a tunnel that leads back to the palace gate, originally built for officers to flee once their lines have been overrun. Mazaria, posing as an army soldier, is planning to detonate explosives where it leads under Bastion 16. Don't forget, Maz is basically the Alpha Legionnaire. There's a flashback biomass that shows how she was recruited. A Marine claiming to be Alfarius, of course, says that she's the type of person they want, loyal to the ideals of the Imperium, but hates how it's being run. He's surprisingly forthcoming about everything, stating that in a few years there will be a rebellion where Horus will go rogue and the Alpha Legion will join him, as Horus's victory will ultimately allow humanity to survive. We have a nice little scene with Perturabo and Horus where they personally meet each other. It's just them two and the Vengeful Spirit away from the other Primarchs for the next stage of the plan to breach the Aegis. Perturabo sees Horus as a slave to chaos and is quietly gathering all warp lore so he can master the warp, unlike Horus has, because that's what he's scared of. Horus very much appeals to Perturabo's emotions, stating that he appreciates all he has done and he's the only other Primarch he trusts anymore. So Horus is basically, he knows what Perturabo wants. Perturabo likes to have his, his ego stroked, and that's what Horus is doing here. He considers the other Primarchs children, but not Perturabo. Perturabo is somewhat flattered, but highly paranoid / distrustful of Horus, because of course it's Perturabo. The demonically Mortarion absolutely arrives late as always, and his very presence is killing the chapter serfs and sending the sons of Horus into sieges by smell alone, because he's full-on demonic Primarch now, and of course everything he goes, he's just poisons and stuff there. Only Horus, Tarmageddon, and Abaddon are unaffected, as Aximand, Folcus, etc. are all convulsing. Pert has gone by this time. Abaddon himself doesn't get why he's unaffected, and Lyak hints it's because he already has the god's favor, which Abaddon dismisses angrily. Horus tells Mortarion that he'll uphold his vow to have the Death Guard be the first to land on Terra. But hearing this, Angron is extremely furious because he wants to be the first to land on Terra, because he wants to butcher everyone. And he's like, oh, what do you mean this guy's a Terra? So he basically starts going on a rampage. He goes inside the Conqueror and starts rampaging across all its lower decks, massacring anything that he comes across. Lotara Sarin, who basically is the commander of the Conqueror, is looking worse for wear these days. She basically has been trying to keep Angron out of the ship for quite some time due to the damage he causes. They basically put Angron on top of the ship. He's like a little bird in a nest, because all he does when he gets in the ship is kill and destroy things. So it's like, just put him up there in the bird's nest. So she basically contacts Khan to say, hey Khan, he's destroying everything and he's on like this rampage at the moment, and he's heading for like the engines and stuff like that. If he reaches there, he'll kill him and they'll explode and stuff like that. So Khan goes down to meet with Angron, but what they don't know is that Lotara Sarin has basically had a conversation with a Night Lord ship. A Night Lord who controls a Nightfall, and they've come to the plan where they will put Angron in the labyrinth of Curse to keep him occupied, to keep him like running around in there so he doesn't destroy anything, until his time arrives where they can shoot him out onto the planet. So Khan goes down. Khan is like, has a little scrap with Angron. Angron absolutely smacks him all the way around. But before Angron can really give like the killing blow, he puts like the teleport responder onto Angron's body, and they teleport him away to the Nightfall and into like the little maze thing, so he can't cause any more damage. It's absolutely hilarious. I just see Angron going around the ship going, rah, 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 it's not fair, just killing everything he comes across, then just gets teleported into a maze when he's like, where the hell how do I get out of here? I think it would be hilarious to see that. So the next part of the siege begins. Kelbor Hal is involved with his disciples. They basically beach one of their Arc Mechanicus ships around the palace each, and if you draw like a straight line connecting the Arc Mechanicus ships to the Sanctum Imperialis, it forms the Star of Chaos. So you can see like the rituals really starting and stuff like that. The ships unleash endless waves of Lost and the Damned as their void shields provide the cover to begin erecting these huge massive siege engines. So this is where we get into the siege aspect now. At the same time, the Death Guard begin their drop pod assault on the walls, and the first Chaos Astartes set foot on Terra. Kashyrio has to deal with the horrific Death Guard assault gas attacks and nigh unstoppable Death Guard. We all know what the Death Guard are like. They're like these marching wall of death, and now they've got all these toxins and stuff. It's probably not really a pretty sight to be in. All seems lost for the group at the Bastion 16 until Jagatai Khan arrives. The Kurgan arrives, leading a massive White Scar jet bike charge. He refuses to leave the conscripts to die despite Dawn's orders. Dawn knows the plan, and yes, you have to be a bit of a bastard, I'm afraid, but it's just Dawn. That's what Dawn is. He's ruthless, but you have to be ruthless in these situations. But anyway, the charge reaches the Dark Mechanicus landing zones, and the Khan slays over 40 Death Guard Marines himself before being stabbed by a warp-tainted poison blade that saps his strength. Sanguinius also violates Dawn's orders and sweeps into the war zone alongside Ralderon and the Blood Angels. Sanguinius rescues Jagatai Khan, who he finds beneath a mound of dead Death Guard. They lead a semi-organized retreat back to the final trench around Bastion 16, which is basically directly in front of the Helios Gate of the Imperial Palace now. As soon as Jagatai Khan enters the palace perimeter, the Emperor's psychic powers kills all the warp taint in his body. So he's like, I'm okay now, I'm fine. So yeah, that's kind of how awesome like the Emperor's psychicness is. It's like if you get hurt by chaos, his psychicness will make it all okay again. He's like, like full on Jesus mode at this moment in time. Now weeks and weeks pass, and we go back to Kashyrio, who is now basically a hardened veteran, and everyone around him is dying of plague. The Death Guard have unleashed. There's a scene where the sky suddenly parts, and an island of floating bones descends from the sky. The palace guns try to shoot it down and stuff like that, but their shots simply pass through it. The island projects a giant image of Zardu Laik, who declares the Imperium has abandoned the common folk to die, and if the citizens of Terra join Horus now, they will be spared. After Laik finishes his speech, it begins to rain blood. The ritual to break the Emperor's shield on Terra and to destroy the Aegis has finally begun. Aboard the Nightfall, Angron is now ejected into space from his maze prison and immediately makes way towards the surface. It's so hilarious. It's like, fire Angron! You just see like this demon prince just being like launched out of a ship, just heading straight down until the surface of Terra. The best way to deploy Angron is fire him like a torpedo. This is 10 out of 10 deployment. Now back on the surface of Terra, the Dark Mechanicus at their landing sites reveal what they've been up to all this time, constructing massive warp bane guns that sap the Aegis of its energy. At the same time, massive towers of Nurgle have been built and are rolling towards the walls, with 3 at Kashyrio's section alone. Endless swarms of Lost in the Dam assail the last trench network in front of the palace walls. The Aegis finally gives way, and Horus's orbital bombardment sweeps through the palace defenses, devastating everything it comes across. Kashyrio running and laughing hysterically at this point at the sheer concept of what he's been through, only survives by running to a hidden tunnel he discovered earlier, where inside he overhears Maz and Dorimek planting charges to destroy Bastion 16. Kashyrio escapes the tunnel just as the Bastion explodes. He emerges from the smoking tunnel to see a flaming mass crash to the ground. It's Angron, and he begins slaying everything he comes across. You have to feel for Cat at this moment in time. Like, he's like survived the orbital bombardment, Death Guard, he gets through the tunnel, like, I'm safe. Then Angron lands in front of him. You're like, what in the living hell am I doing here? Stop this. Faced with Angron and the incoming siege towers, Kashyrio is about to lay down and let himself die when Sanguinius, glorious Sanguinius, appears and leads a massive Blood Angel charge from the gates. Imperial fists under the command of Thane as well, and Titans from the Legio Solaria come with them. Dawn has relented and allowed the palace gates to be open, and all surviving army conscripts be allowed inside as the Space Marines and the Titans buy time. It's like they're at the front, everyone get inside, get inside, get inside, well, we start to fight. Ultimately, the Marines and the Titans are able to destroy the siege towers and escort all the conscripts to safety. Angron then charges the walls towards Sanguinius and yells a challenge, but the Emperor's remaining barrier still blocks him from getting any closer. Remember his psychic barrier. Sanguinius salutes Angron with his awesome spear and states that they will battle soon, but today is not that day. Is this hype mode for Angron versus the Angel? Please let it be so, because this is what I want more than anything. So Cassirio makes it inside of the walls, and he apologizes to a Marine, who turns out to be Fane, about how he's been a burden and how many Astartes died protecting, him and, the Imperial army. Fane state that it doesn't matter who anyone is anymore. Mortals and Astartes and the conscripts are all brave warriors for the Emperor who should have each other's backs. Cassirio is attended by a medic and begins screaming as he sees Dorimek smirking at him and disappearing into the crowd. Alpha Legion! The medic thinks he's delirious and puts him under with drugs. The final chapter of the book shows Horus again in a comatose state, scanning the warp. Abaddon watching him angrily nearby. Laik states that Horus is doing the important work. The siege is being waged in both the Imperium and the Imperium, and each time Horus enters the warp, he is breaking the Emperor's spirit bit by bit. Laik states that he knows Abaddon's growing resentment against Horus and reveals that Horus is basically now a wildfire. He's glowing bright, swelling with the powers of chaos, but the gods are going to see him burn out soon and he will die soon. Abaddon asks what will happen if Horus dies before he kills the Emperor, and Laik states that the gods will have to find another champion if that is the case. And there we have it. That is the full spoilers, the summary of the Legion. The Lost, not the Legion of the Damned. That is a completely different thing. The Lost and the Damned. It was an amazing book. The book itself is gorgeous. I've got 2 of them so far. I'm going to be collecting the full series because they're just too good not to have. Hopefully GW will make more of the special editions so more people can get it, because still there's not enough for enough people to go round. Right, thank you for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. Do you like what you've heard? Do you hate what you've heard? Do you, I don't know, post anything below and we can just talk about it down there. Thanks for watching the video once again. Have a great day, and I'll see you all very, very soon. See you now, and bye-bye.